Evening, and thank you for your patience as we work always through those last minute glitches, getting this virtual meeting up and running. Welcome to this July 22nd, 2020 council work session. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's stay home, stay safe order. This format enables the city council to meet and take care of business while keeping its members, staff, and the public safe. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials webpage. Looking ahead, tonight's regular meeting will include a public forum and several public hearing action items. Information about how to participate in this meeting is available on the public webcast and meeting materials webpage. And I will remind you several times, if you are here to speak, particularly to the budget discussion, that is a public hearing, and your testimony should be submitted during the public hearing time, not the public forum time. But we'll remind you as we go forward. And as always, other avenues of communications with me and city councilors are available, including email and voicemail. Thank you very much for joining us. And so with that, we have a first item of business, park blocks and farmers market update. And I'll turn to manager to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I wanted to just, before Will jumps into his presentation, I wanted to speak to just two items around timing and naming. And the first is really around the timing of this conversation. I know all of us have had a really difficult few months, and especially few weeks, and maybe even just last 24 hours. And it's really difficult to shift focus to something like this that just feels like, oh, we're back to talking about this project. But I want to assure you that we've been thinking about that. In fact, we've had this scheduled several times during the pandemic, and then we got to the budget conversation, and every time it has just felt like there's not a great time to just sort of pick back up into regular work. And so that's what this is. And if we're going to give you a great update and overview of where we've been and give you some decision points going forward. But I just want to acknowledge that it feels a little bit awkward because we're still all feeling like in a bit of an emergency. And the second thing is around naming. And I just wanted to bring up, especially right now as we're talking about race and race equity in our community, we have gotten some feedback. And I think I've mentioned this to several of you in our one-on-ones, but I received some feedback when I first started in this role. And I know we did through some of our public outreach sort of late into the process that Town Square doesn't have the best ring for a lot of our community members, that it's very reminiscent of places where people were bought and sold and lynchings happened. And there's something about that term that when we get to the end of this process, I think there'll be a really important opportunity for you to determine what you want this space to be called. If you still want it to be the park blocks, if you want to rename it, it's difficult to change the Town Square project name midstream because we have websites and information and materials and a lot of engagement with our community, but we're going to be we're definitely moving away from that. So I just wanted to bring it up so you know that that happens. And if you start seeing that those words are slowly moving into the background as we move forward with the project, that we want the entire community to feel welcome and safe and that it's a place for them. So with that, I'm gonna just let Will do his presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, Agency Board. I'm Will Dowdy from Community Development, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share another update with you about the Park Blocks and Farmers Market. I will share my screen. Okay. I last talked with you in February, and I said that I'd be back in mid-April. Since then, your schedule has had to adjust to the many urgent needs of the community, and here we are today, ready to share this update with you now. Throughout my presentation, I'll talk about this work as a single project, but I want to be clear right off the bat that something like this can be implemented in multiple steps. In the same way that we've been calibrating the design to be right for Eugene, we can calibrate the implementation to be the right steps for our community today. More on that later. I'd like to start by grounding this conversation in the context of the process we are working through. I'll start by returning to the city manager's metaphor of beacons along a journey. Beacons like these can seem less important when you're on a roll, but sometimes, especially if your attention has had to shift to other priorities, they're a quick way to pick up where you left off and recognize how far you've come. One component of this is the design process. The architect and landscape architect have completed the schematic design phase of the park blocks and farmers market. I'll share their design work and the cost estimates that accompany that today. This work was actually completed in March. Around the time that a state of emergency was declared, we hit the pause button on the design, wanting to hold off on further project work until we've had this chance to reconnect with you and find out how you'd like us to move forward in the context of COVID-19. You may have noticed that I'm here without any of the consultants on our team. It's a little hard to notice in Zoom, but if we were at the table, you'd notice. Well, that's part of this hold on work. So here we are at the end of schematic design. When you authorize us to continue the project, the next steps will be developing the design and then the production of construction drawings, after which comes bidding, permitting, construction, and celebrating. As you'll remember, we have a separate path for City Hall. It's currently, you can see that one at the bottom of the screen. It's currently in the middle of the schematic design phase, paused there in the middle of the phase, a couple of months behind the park blocks and farmers market, and its path will continue to be independent of the rest of the project. This design fits into a larger project context. While the seeds lie much deeper, especially regarding the farmers market, I've gone back to 2016 and the groundwork that you started laying then, amending the urban renewal plan and collaborating with Lane County on the vision for the civic heart. Jump ahead to 2019, and there's the purchase of the butterfly lot, the community vision work, outreach and public events with all the music and dancing in the park blocks, and the concept design prepared by Cameron McCarthy. We are here at this purple dot. The steps after this are agency board action about the use of urban renewal funds, action on budget authorization for construction once the bids are in, and then the project can move into construction. As I've just alluded to, the project also sits within a context of the process outlined in the urban renewal plan, a process you established in 2016 for the 4 urban renewal projects. There's the plan, the process, and here we are. You can see that we are moving through each of these steps. The farmers market and park blocks were each designated as projects eligible for urban renewal funds in the plan that you amended in 2016. At that time, council set individual limits for the amount of urban renewal funds that could go into each of the 4 projects. Later in the presentation, I'll return to these funding caps while talking about the cost estimate and available resources. After the projects were put into the plan with these funding caps, we began the process of community engagement and project scoping. This included the concept design process and schematic design and cost estimating. As I've said, I'll share that work with you today. In order to continue the design and advance the park blocks and farmers market projects separately or together, the next step per the urban renewal process is a public hearing about whether the projects should move forward and how they should be funded. Finally, the agency board will need to take action. Now that you can see the project in the context of the design process, the council decisions, and the urban renewal process, I'd like to turn to the review of the schematic design. These are the existing conditions. Shown here, you know this place well. You can see 8th Avenue running east to west across the screen, Oak Street running up and down, the park blocks on the lower part, the butterfly lot on the upper left, and the Lane County Public Service Building on the upper right side. Now here we have the concept design that Cameron McCarthy developed last year in collaboration with numerous partners and other community members. You've seen this many times. You probably know it about as well as I do at this point. 8th Avenue stills running across east-west, Oak Street up and down. You can see the Market Pavilion and City Hall site where the butterfly lot used to be. So that's what we've talked about in the past. So moving into new material. Since we last met, our team has completed the schematic design, which builds on the concept design and refines it. This is one of many drawings and details that are part of this phase. I'm going to focus my comments on the Farmers Market Pavilion, shown in orange. While the team has done a lot of great work on the park blocks and the plaza area, it has been mostly a process of refinement and technical considerations, where the attractive drawings of the concept design become more exact. Let's stay here for a minute. Let's talk about the Market Pavilion. As you know, we had an open house in early February in which we specifically discussed the architecture with community members. Our architect, FFA, has taken the comments, the compliments and critiques, and worked to keep what needed keeping and change what needed changing. Consistent with the pavilion's purpose of providing year-round space for our farmers, it continues to speak with the architectural language of a greenhouse. At the same time, we heard concerns that the pavilion was too tall for the context, and FFA has reduced the height while maintaining an interior space that is open and airy. Now we have the views. This is a view taken from the intersection of 8th and Oak. You're facing northwest, and you can see the county courthouse on the right of your screen, although from my screen, it's covered up by the zoom bar of all the faces. So let's say on the left side, you can see the Tiffany building. Okay, the pavilion here shows that lower height, and it continues to have the strong solar orientation towards the morning and away from the afternoon sun. The materials are chosen for being practical and economical, wood on the base, and the transparency above it is not a glass curtain wall, but durable polycarbonate panels. FFA has also worked on extending this openness and transparency to the west side of the pavilion so that the businesses and properties on West Park Street are better connected to the whole ensemble. Here's the same view later in the day. This view doesn't have the market tents in it, which is a good reminder that this pavilion has a lot of flexibility. Its indoor-outdoor design makes it a uniquely versatile community gathering place for all sorts of cultural events and other programming. You may have noticed that the architects have included an early concept for City Hall in the drawing. It's here to give you a better sense of the Market Pavilion in its urban context. As I mentioned earlier, the City Hall is still in the middle of the schematic design process, and FFA has a lot more work to do before the building is ready to be the focus of attention. I should add that we've also heard a bit about trees from the community, some asking for more, and others thinking that the trees crowd the space and block the views. So consider this a work in progress, as the architects and landscape architects continue to collaborate on the right species selection to achieve the right balance. Moving where we are, this view drops you right into the middle of the plaza looking north to the City Hall. Immediately on your left, that's the Farmers Market Pavilion. The lower part of the pavilion's walls are sliding barn doors, large wooden sliding barn doors, so that it can be more open or more closed depending on the weather. In this view, the doors are about half open. Think of it as a brisk autumn afternoon. The same view. Making sure that the slides are advancing correctly. The same view in the evening. I call this the walking to City Council image. This gives you a good sense of the polycarbonate panels and the way the pavilion will be able to glow during the evening hours. One last image. This one takes us inside. You're looking south here, and on the left, on the eastern face, you can see that strong orientation to the morning light. I think of the building as a big scoop to capture sunlight, and you can see the openness to the plaza. You can imagine what an attractive community venue this can be when the market isn't in session, airy and great wood materials, and when the market is operating, the vibrancy will be much more than anything we can put into a drawing like this. Now we're going to leave the world of computer modeling behind and shift to talk about the financial side of things. Last fall, when I presented the concept design work to you, I shared that our team estimated the total project cost for the park blocks, farmers market, and adjacent streets to be about $25 million. As part of the schematic design process, we've worked with our contractor, Lees Crutcher Lewis, to develop a more accurate estimate based on where the design stands today. After working through all sorts of details with the design team, our estimate ranges from $21 to $25 million. It's about $10 million for the park blocks and another $10 million for the farmers market, which includes half the butterfly lot demolition, the plaza area, and the pavilion. And there's a range of about $2 to $4 million for Oak Street and the various segments of Park Street. You'll see this note here about the rights of way. The streets will be designed in collaboration with our public works project teams. And when we get to later stages of the design process, we'll get a better sense of engineering efficiencies that are possible on this project, as well as funding available through our pavement preservation plan. Moving to the lower half of the screen, in the AIS, I shared a summary of funds that are available for this project. The Urban Renewal Plan says the farmers market is eligible for up to $4.5 million. some of which was spent on the acquisition of the property. Lane County pledged a contribution as part of the purchase and sale agreement, about half in cash and the other half in in-kind services to be determined. And together that all adds up to about $4 million, a little more than $4 million identified for the farmers market. The park blocks and the rights of way are eligible for up to $5.2 million under the park blocks and open space project within the urban renewal plan. And with funds identified in the parks STC plan for downtown, there's a little more than $6.5 million available. I've been asked about the flexibility of funds between these urban renewal projects or among these urban renewal projects. And because there's a funding cap in the plan for each of the projects, it would require a substantial amendment, what's called a type 2 amendment, either for spending some of the farmers market funds on the park blocks or the park blocks open space funds on the farmers market. One additional opportunity has just shown up. We've heard from our regional office of the U.S. Economic Development Administration, that's the U.S. EDA, that there are federal grants associated with the CARES Act, and that the farmers market project would be a strong contender due to its role in supporting the local economy and strengthening community resilience. We are still figuring out the specifics around the grant application, but it appears that if we were successful, we could receive $1 to $3 million. That concludes the presentation of the project scoping and cost estimates. As I mentioned at the beginning, the next step that you set in the urban renewal process will be a public hearing in which you would ask community members to comment on whether the park blocks and farmers markets should move forward, and if so, how they should be funded. Directing the agency director to schedule this public hearing is one of the options identified in your packet. Once you have had the opportunity for this public comment, then will come the time for you to deliberate and act, either moving a project forward with urban renewal funding or not. What might your options look like when you get to that point? As I've worked through these numbers and listened to ideas about different opportunities, I keep finding that the potential options coalesce into a few paths. These aren't necessarily exclusive of other approaches, but something to prompt your discussion. The most obvious options are the two extremes. You can choose to stop all work on the park blocks and farmers market, or you can choose to move both projects forward in their entirety. The benefit of stopping work is that the funding plan takes care of itself. The downside is that we haven't addressed the community needs that started this whole project. At the other end, the benefit is the construction of the full community vision. The downside is a funding gap that would require filling, and you have a list of the various means of doing so. In between, there is a spectrum of options that I'd characterize as phased approaches, phasing being something that a few of you expressed interest in at previous work sessions. One of these options would be starting with a phase that matches the current funds identified, such as building the farmers market plaza, that whole northwest park block, while putting the pavilion and the southern park blocks into later phases. So it would be horizontal only or landscape only and no architecture, no building. Another approach would be tackling a larger phase, such as the whole farmers market project. This would either require finding other funding sources, or the type 2 plan amendment I mentioned earlier, which could enable transferring funds from one project bucket to another without changing the overall maximum indebtedness of the plan. Those are 4 possible paths you could pursue, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. I think it bears repeating that the primary purpose of today's work session is one of process. Would you like to invite the community to comment on these projects or not at this time? The 3 options for your action this evening are here on the screen. And I will point out, apropos to the city manager's comments at the beginning, that the option number 1 includes something about returning prior to council summer break. And one option would be to have the first option without that time frame requirement, which would be just a little bit more general. So I've covered a lot of material: process, design, costs, funds, and future options. And I can answer any questions at this point or clarify anything that I said too quickly. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Will. That was a really great summary, and always interesting to see the schematic. So I have Betty raising her hand. So Betty, you're first.
What a surprise. Where's Mike? Okay, I favor scheduling a public hearing, and my preference is to do the farmers market and leave the park blocks till later. And I hope that money is flexible if we find that we need something else more. But I think the park blocks are fine as they are, except they need good restrooms. But aside from that, I think they can take care of themselves for now. And I think we need to hear from the public. But in my opinion, it looks better. The design looks better than the original, than the previous one. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and then Mike.
Yeah, I agree with Betty. I would like to move this forward to a public hearing and get some input. It's been a while since we've gotten input specifically on this project from the public. And I would support a plan amendment to fund the whole farmers market piece of the project and then wait on the park blocks improvements. Although I'm eager to do those, I think if we have to balance those things out, the farmers market project, I believe is more important. And I think that would also put us going forward with this, would put us in a good position because I really think we need to put ourselves in as good a position as possible to be eligible for those CARES Act funds that Will mentioned. The farmers market is an important part of driving our local economy, and so that's another reason why I would support moving forward at that piece over not doing anything, doing something smaller, or prioritizing the park blocks over it. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, and then Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Claire, who agrees with Betty. And I agree with Betty on all of the things they just said. I'm left with a question for Will. In the presentation on the two different funding stream options, park blocks and then farmers market, you showed Parks SDCs as a portion of the Parks blocks potential funding stream. Does that availability of budgeted money include an assumption about what we will do with the methodology? In other words, our upcoming decisions about Parks SDCs. In other words, does it assume we're going to have a bunch of new money, or does it assume we're going to not increase SDCs?
No, it would. The only difference based on what possible action you would take would be the timing that those funds are available. And so so whatever actions you choose to take regarding the methodology will, those funds will be there either way.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. So we can make that decision
Councilor
free.
Clerk, just one quick thing, and because I just don't remember off the top of my head, and I don't see Matt here on the call. I think it may need to be added to the project list, which is one of the things that you'll be doing, which has nothing to do with the rate or the number. It's just, I believe it's already on there, but I'm not 100% sure.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the accuracy piece. You're trying to make sure we're talking about it the right way. My real genuine point, though, is that later when we get to the SDC discussion, I want to just make sure that at every point before, we've made it clear that we don't have to increase SDCs for all of those projects to continue on the path that we've discussed. And in both this case and the previous case, we know that we don't have to increase Parks SDCs for us to have that money available. That's just the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer, then Chris.
Thank you. Will, thanks for that presentation. And also thank you for looking for those grant opportunities. I know that those can sometimes be tricky, and I appreciate that staff is keeping their eyes open for those. I was wondering if you could tell me what you think the cost would be for your proposed, the small phase option that you said.
I don't have a great number for you. I'm thinking that it's based on the estimates that I've looked through, it'd be in the $4 to $5 million range. And again, it would depend. That would be doing the horizontal, and there's some question about exactly how much of the street do we do. And so there's a few variables in terms of actually getting the right size scope, and that's something that we would really drill into. But maybe $3 to $5 million, $3 to $6 million. The range keeps getting bigger, but
That's okay.
but it's in that area.
I appreciate there are some things that would have to be figured out to be able to nail down that number. I agree with the other counselors. I think getting some community feedback would be great at this point. I like the changes that were made, and I definitely think the farmers market section is the most important to me at this point in time to try to move forward and to support those local farms and local businesses that could really use a better space than what they have at this point. So I am in agreement.
Great, thank you. Chris and then Alan.
Yeah, I just want to lend my voice to agree with the others to say that, yes, we need to have a public hearing. I'm very interested in knowing what the public's perspective is on this project and the individual parts as well as the whole. And I also agree this can't be done unless we do it in phases. Yeah, you know, I can't eat a sandwich in one bite, but if you take it one bite at a time, you'll eventually get it down. So I think that's the way we have to do it. And if I'm picking which bite to bite first, yeah, it's the farmer's market. We absolutely have to do that first. I am undecided as to whether we should do the pavilion first or the flat space first. I would be open to hearing different perspectives on which one is going to provide the biggest bang for the buck. But yeah, I'm absolutely supportive of doing that piece first, doing it in phases, and having the public weigh in to help guide us in the right direction. So yeah.
Alan and then Emily.
Thanks, Mayor. I really like the design. Yeah, the pictures are a lot better. Great that we could potentially get a grant. I hope that works out. What does it take, Will, to do a type 2 substantial plan amendment? What do we have to do to change the URD plan?
Let's start with the council directing us to bring back a draft. We would bring back that draft plan, and then we would take it out to the other taxing districts, the planning commission. The agency would hold a public hearing, and then you would take action. I think I've got all of those steps right. We can clarify that for you because there's others who are much more facile with the ins and outs of putting those plans together. I believe that the whole thing takes about 4 to 6 months, but it starts with a decision or a direction to begin the.
Yeah, what is the review with the taxing districts and the school district? What do they have to do? Do they have to approve?
I don't know that offhand.
Okay, if you could find out, that would be good, or someone else on the call knows. So, is there any immediate things that need to be taken care of in the park blocks? The park blocks is old and it's in dire need of some refurbishment, but are there any immediate things that are capital projects that we need to take care of in the short term?
I don't have a kind of like a contractor's list of urgent items. I can share the things that have risen to the top in community conversations. One of the biggest things that we've heard a lot about is the infrastructure or the utilities. And that it has to do with the flexibility of holding events in the space and limited access to power or water, and whether you are trying to set up a market or you are just trying to have an evening party. That's one of the big constraints that we've heard a lot of people say. We've had people talk about the failing concrete. That's really the whole floor of the whole space. And so I don't know exactly how much time is left on that concrete, but the spaces between the different panels is starting to get bigger and bigger. And at some point you need to put a new surface. We've had a lot of people talk about lighting as a need, especially related to safety. If you are someone who depends on accessible path of travel, the park blocks, especially the west block, is not very friendly. So that's one of the things that has been talked about. Councilor Taylor mentioned the restrooms, and that's another thing that we've heard a number of times from community members. So I would say those are the top things that we've heard people talk about.
Stage.
Yep. The stage works well for certain events, but people talk about it being a barrier to less organized or not very well funded groups who want to be able to put on events. It's really good if you've got a lot of resources and you can put on a big production and bring in a lot of your own equipment. But that's a lot of work for any organization that does.
Yeah. So, but it's not falling down,
No.
right? So there is no there's no long-term or even near-term do nothing for the park blocks. You have to maintain it because it's old and it needs refurbishment. So we have to figure that out. But having said all that, I think we can figure that out. But I am in favor of changing the plan to include to shift the monies from the park blocks over to the farmers market. I agree with everybody that that's the appropriate project to do, and the higher priority in the park blocks we'll have to figure out later, and we can patch it together for the short term. What I don't understand is or what I'm concerned about is the public input part. It's not a requirement, correct? And we've had tons of input. I mean, this project has got so much input. My real concern is with what we're asking them. So there's a bit of homework people need to do in order to comment effectively on this. I mean, they have to understand a lot of this financing part of this in order to effectively do that. For instance, the fact that urban renewal money cannot be just used for anything. It can only be used within the urban renewal district, only be used for projects that are specified. So it has a lot of constraints on it. You can't use it for a homeless shelter. You can't use it for police reform. You can't do all these other things that people might want to do about it, but it takes a little homework to be able to understand that. And if we get a bunch of feedback that says, no, don't do this project, spend it on these other priorities, that doesn't make any sense because we can't. So I guess the question is, I'm concerned that we're setting ourselves up in this public input, because unless we do some kind of public education process. So what are we going to do to get people to understand the really weird idiosyncrasies of urban renewal financing, and not have a bunch of people come and say, please don't do this, spend it on other priorities that we think are more important, which we can't. Do we have a plan for that? Or you could say we will.
We have not worked through what the process would be for getting ready for that public hearing. We have an interested parties list who's been following the project. That would be the first means of communication that we would do as a way to reach a lot of people, especially people in their homes, rather than expecting them to come out for any sort of information session. I think it's a standard thing for us that we would want to approach it, like you said, by explaining the specifics around urban renewal and urban renewal spending, and particularly the limitations or the specificity that's written into the current plan.
Right.
And I think and then we have the opportunity to preface the public hearing with some comments, and so I think that would be another opportunity that we could do that. I do want to say, if I understood you correctly, you asked about whether the public hearing is a required step, and it is required per the plan. So it's not a requirement that plans need to have that step in them, but we have the plan that, as you amended it in 2016, says that in order to move forward, there was a requirement that we would have this section where we've explained the project scoping, and then after we've fully explained the project scoping, that there is that public comment opportunity. So even though we've already done a lot of public comment, as you mentioned, it needs to fall procedurally after this one before you can take action.
So if we shift gears and want to amend the plan, that kind of shifts the process away from our current track onto that track. Can we just combine those two things and have the public hearing on the new plan?
I believe that you could, because you would be if you were amending the plan now, you could you could do that process. The consideration for you would be one of timing. If you want us to move forward with the design of the farmers market, for example, because that's something that a number of people said, for you to go through the hearing and the action and telling us to go forward with the farmers market would free up funds or open funds so that we could continue the design work. While the design work's going on, then you could be doing the amendment to come up with a plan for the full construction dollars, which is, as you know, a much larger percentage of the costs. Or you could wait on, and we would hold off on the design until you've completed that amendment process. So that would be something that you could choose either way to go.
Yeah, I'll need another round, Mayor. I want to explore that a little bit more and have another
And
question.
Councilors, like I also wanted to answer your concurrence question about the other overlapping tax districts. I don't believe that you'll need concurrence from them unless you increase the spending limit in the plan.
We're just amending it. It doesn't.
Yeah. If you're moving
Okay.
it from project to project, I don't believe that that's a requirement.
Right. Okay. I'd like to come back to this issue. If get in the queue again, please. I think it's still unresolved.
Okay, got it. Emily.
Thank you. I just have a couple small questions. In general, I agree with everybody else. The farmers market is really important, especially the pavilion, in my mind. And I'm okay with waiting on parks. We talked about that before, but I will agree that the concrete floor of the parks, the panels are separating, and I walk through them often on my way, well, when I used to go to the office, and they are hazardous. So I don't know, how we fix that if we're taking all the money from parks. Some of the parks money is from SDCs, which can go to park-like things like playgrounds. How do we get to move that over to the farmers market?
It's Parks has evaluated this project before to include using SDCs for the potential new fountain and also for new plaza, because it's serving an increased demand in that area. So it's not about moving it over. It's already an eligible expense.
Great, good answer. A part of the open space downtown was by the Holt Center, Kesey Square, and the library to make our river flowing from Willamette to the river. How would this affect those small projects if we put all the money into farmers market? Because they are smaller, and I think they could make a difference, and we need some fun things also.
Vinny, do you want to weigh in on these?
Well, I just hope that we can not let those go, because I don't think they're millions of dollars, but they're things that could easily get shuffled aside, and I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, we can definitely evaluate that as we go forward, and give you more information before you direct us to amend the plan.
Great. And my last comment is, why can't we have a restroom at both the farmers market and the park blocks? I would, we don't have to decide that yet, but I think that's really important to have them on each block. That's it. Go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to circle back with Alan, but I want to do two things. First, I think I have to correct myself, because this is actually a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency, and I may have gabbled in saying it was a city council meeting. So just let that stand as a correction, that this is the Urban Renewal Agency meeting. The second thing is the other component is the shifting of the streets and reducing the curbs on the streets. And when we talk about doing the farmers market, does that work live separately, or would that be included, that curb work?
That's a great question, and that is the a part of the range that I was giving to Councilor Ye in response to her question. What we need to do is evaluate based on the proposal, or the kind of the direction that we want to go, the direction that you give us about how big of a project we would be looking at, and then work with our engineers to figure out what's the right approach to the streets, and is it something that's phased in over time, or we do some of them in fully complete and others not. And so that's that really kind of is something to be determined as we get into more specificity about the outcome.
Yeah, it would just seem like that at least across 8th Avenue, between the park blocks and the farmers market plaza, that it would be great to have that all to the same grade at the very least, if that falls in. The other thing is, partly to Emily's comment, is thinking about some of the limitations of the park blocks themselves, that if we did this work on the plaza, in the short term, the plaza might also be available for some other events and might have better infrastructure than the park blocks does. So in the immediate term, that work sort of sets us up to help accommodate more outdoor events, I would think. Am I right in reading it that way?
Absolutely. It's intended to be it's intended to be a new park block. Actually, it's the recovery of an old park block, but it's intended to be adding one back into that space. And so even though it has a pavilion on it, even though we're talking about it as the farmers market project, it really is a new park block for the community to have and to use how we use park blocks.
Right. Yeah. That sounds great. Well, I'm with the counselors on this. I think it's great to invest in that farmers market and plaza. So Alan, you had a second round.
Yeah, so clarifying the plaza that's to the east of the structure, would that be eligible for park XDCs? Because you didn't have it in the right column. You had it under the park blocks and not under farmers market. So is it available?
Yeah, that's
we just did that one.
I'm sorry, that's a mistake on my part in preparing that slide. We have been talking about the park SDCs primarily in connection with the fountain, but as the city manager mentioned, it's something that's flexible, and that could be going towards park amenity, taken more generally on either side of 8th Avenue in relation to this project.
Oh, okay, so that treed plaza could be, SDCs could be used for that, park SDCs. Okay, so then if we change the plan, we have all the money we need to move forward. There's in urban renewal district money, correct? We don't need, and if we got the grant, that would even be better, and maybe that could increase some enhancements or something like that, or we could save some of the money to do some of the repairs. But so there isn't really a question about the funding source because we have all the money if we change the plan. So I'm wondering if there isn't a more efficient way to tackle this by going forward with the design. I don't see any counselor saying we shouldn't move forward. Going forward with the design dollars, which is the commitment that we need to make, and then spending the 4 to 6 months it takes to amend the plan. And the reason I'm talking about that is because construction projects like this one are our local stimulus project for the economic recovery that we need to put forward. So projects like this one, they hire people, they create payroll, they create jobs, and they're our local stimulus. They're mostly done by private sector folks. So, but we need to do them as fast as possible. Putting this out another 4 to 6 months plus another couple of months for this process and we're out a whole maybe a year, 9, 12 months from now. Moving that and accelerating it should be a higher priority for council because of the economic stimulus it has associated with the job. So is there a way to condense this into a shorter process that allows us to go with the design and then go forward with the amendment process and get rolling faster? Because I get a sense that's where I think a lot of the council would want to go without the other process getting in the way.
I think that the fastest way that you could do this would be to do two things. One would be to direct the agency director to schedule the public hearing, followed up by your action. And that's the fastest path to getting dollars available for spending on the design. And then the other path, as you've identified, there would be two parts to this. The other path would be amending the urban renewal plan, which I suppose could happen right now. But that would, or you could ask us to come back and talk about what that would entail.
I think counselors like it. I think what you just said is actually the plan that we're recommending. So go ahead and schedule the public hearing so we can get moving on that design and get moving on the construction. If you want us to come back with a plan amendment, you could also either do a motion now to direct us to implement that, or we could prepare one and have it ready for you at another time.
Yeah, I get a sense that the council is ready to act. So can we add, what would we need to do to the motion to add in that the staff also needs to bring back an amendment to the plan, start that process right away? I mean, a sense of urgency I think we should have a sense of urgency on these kind of projects. So that's why I'm pushing hard.
Yeah.
But so could we just add that and that maybe add another sentence that says, and staff will initiate a plan amendment to change the funding allocations?
Right.
Or Catherine.
I'm waiting for Catherine to weigh in whether they should be two separate motions or whether you can just bundle them together in one jumbo.
Be nice to have one
Unless
jumbo
somebody actually
motion.
wants to vote in one way on one thing and another way on another, which then they could move to divide. But you could add a sentence to the end of the proposed motion that says, and direct the agency director to return with a proposed plan amendment. Something like that.
Yeah, Emily, I hope you add that into the motion. Thanks.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't mean to disagree with my colleague at all. I know that's odd, but I do want to make sure that we have appropriate time for public comment on this, because as we've noticed lately, rushing things through without appropriate public comment during a difficult time, I think may be equally unwise. They may not have, the public in general may not have the complete set of details that we have, but I sense that they have the wisdom to understand what we're doing. And so I would certainly hate to see us, I am too thinking that we are in agreement on moving forward with farmers market, but I would hate to see undue haste that would end up with community members unhappy with this, which ought to be a project that everybody celebrates. So.
Okay, I think with that, yeah, Alan, one more comment.
Just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that we delay the public comment. That the meeting, the sentence that says meeting should be scheduled before July 30th still stands. It's just getting the other process rocking and rolling as fast as we can. So that requires another public hearing. So there's another opportunity. But if we delay to do that motion until after July 30th, that means it doesn't come back until the fall. That means we're out another several months before you even have that conversation. So it delays it. So this project doesn't start until all that process is done. So that's I wasn't short circuiting the public comment process, although we do need an education part of it, but I was wanting to get the other part going at the same time, which involves another public comment and moving forward before we move forward.
Oops. Okay. So Emily, are you prepared to put a motion on the table?
I will do my best. I would think these should be divided.
If you're looking for just kind of generally what I was thinking, if that would be helpful for you, I can throw out kind of a sentence that would work when you get to the end of your motion, or I just want to help you however I can. So
I'll read what's here and then you can throw in the last sentence.
Okay.
Which says basically direct Sarah to start this Plan 1 amendment, Type 1 amendment. You will have the words, I know it. Okay. I move to direct the agency director to schedule a public hearing on the park blocks and farmers market projects in order to solicit public feedback on whether the park blocks and farmers market projects should move forward, as well as the appropriate funding mechanism for the projects. The agency director is further directed to schedule a meeting to allow the agency board to deliberate on the projects. The meeting should be scheduled after the public hearing, but prior to July 30th, 2020. I also direct the agency director to
begin the process to amend the downtown urban renewal plan to amend or remove the cap on agency funds that may be used on the farmers market project.
Second.
Any further discussion, clarification?
City attorney earned her pay today.
There you go. Okay. All in favor, please raise your hands, real hands or virtually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess
Seems
we don't have
missing.
Counselor Evans. We're missing Counselor Evans.
Greg is frozen.
Oh, you might give me a hint.
I'm unfrozen now.
Okay,
is that
great. Was that a yes? Are you voting
Yeah,
yes?
make it 8.
Okay, that's 8 in favor. Thank you very much. That was a great conversation and great to be moving forward. And thank you, Will, very much for a great presentation and explanation. And I think that's all we've got for this 5:30 meeting. Oh, yes, Claire.
Do we want to convene the city council and do our consent calendar?
Oh, we could do the consent calendar. I don't want to do anything else, but we could do the consent calendar. Yes. Okay, let me
Emily.
let me adjourn the meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency and open the meeting of the City Council. And put a motion forward.
I move to approve the items on consent calendar 1.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. Thank you very much. That passes. And then I think that's the only business we can pull out from the following meeting. So thank you all very much. You get a nice little dinner break before what's probably going to be a long evening meeting. So thank you very much and see you soon. Bye.